Hey guys, Woods Farm here, Project 222. This is episode 20. In this episode we're going to be doing a lot of fabricating work, a lot of cutting, grinding, welding. You're going to see how that happens. We're still working on the front end, working on some of those panels, those larger pieces, and we're trying to get all the angles just right. Well, that sucks. Just a couple inches shy of being able to fit the full pattern on this 4x8 sheet. I think what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to, that was the original length before I realized, I thought this piece angled in slightly, but it's one solid piece. The angle kind of, that plane keeps going all the way to the very nose. You know, I could just attach a piece here, but this is going to be in view. This line here is actually, a lot of it's under the fender. We noticed that when we were patterning and test fitting stuff last night. Really, you just get a little bit up here that you see, and the rest of it's going to be kind of concealed. So I don't know, I might actually just cut it here and then cut another piece and weld them together. Okay, now cutting it out, just using the angle grinder and a zip cut. Works pretty well on 1/8 material. And just cleaning everything up now. Finding it's a little easier to kind of take some of this rust off probably now, as opposed to when it's welded on the vehicle, especially on the inside. And then there's another section on that front driver's side panel. The roof line is extended up above the driver's window there. The roof is a little higher just to give the driver some more headroom. So I forgot to cut that little extra section out, so I'm also going to have to scab that on. So again, just cardboard patterning. Trace it on and then cut it out with the zip cut. A little bit of a learning curve using the angle grinder to cut, but with this, the 1/8 material, it goes through it pretty quickly. Keeping a straight line with practice, I've gotten pretty good at it. You do go through a lot of these discs though. I bought tons and tons of them on sale. Got a pretty good supply. Just using a flap disc, 80 grit flap disc to clean up the edges. Just kind of take the burr off the edge. I also like those 80 grit flap discs for prepping for weld. So just putting a little bit of a bevel on it and making sure the metal's clean. Okay, so quite a bit of cutting done. I've got those two pieces to work on that front upper panel. They're all cut and prepped. So now I'm going to move on to some welding. That's where that triangle goes, right in there. It just extends the panel forward towards the nose. And that other small rectangular section goes right above the vision port. It's just to raise the roof line a little bit. I forgot to include that on the pattern, so I'm going to have to go back and scab it on the best I can. Got it all clamped down. The main thing is trying to weld this in a way so it doesn't warp and it stays flat. Also want to make sure it's a good weld that I can grind down and hopefully kind of hide. Just had to notch out a little bit of the frame to get it to sit. These are things that you notice when you actually start working with the steel plate. When you use the cardboard patterns that are a little bit flexible, obviously, so sometimes they'll kind of just bow and bend around stuff in a real subtle way. I suspected I might have to trim that down just a hair, so it's not a big deal. Okay, now the fun part, get to do some welding. I'm now using 3/5 wire. I went up from 3/0 just because I knew I'd be probably doing some thicker welding than I had previous. So far, I'm liking the 3/5. So I talked about how clamping it was important. The real issue here is I don't want it to warp, which is something that can happen when if you tack it, you know, incorrectly, it'll warp out of alignment. So I got to be real careful. Make sure I tack it kind of evenly from both sides. Make sure everything's flush. And then the other thing you have to do is you got to make sure you don't weld too much and put too much heat into the material, because that'll also warp it. So I'm just doing a little bit of welding, letting it cool off, a little bit of welding. Just using a real basic Mastercraft MIG welder. They come on sale every once in a while. I've got another video on my channel reviewing the welder. Built a Kuba wagon with it, and so far it's running pretty good. And there's the finished weld. Now I'm going to the grinder, and because I'm trying to scab these two plates together and make it look like one continuous piece of steel, I got to make sure that weld is nice and flush and kind of just trying to make sure the weld's hidden to the best of my ability. I thought I might have to go back over it with another bead. So I'm just grinding it down to see how it looks, and with a bit of luck it'll be nice and flush and you won't really notice it. I really like those 80 grit flap discs, but they're really expensive, so I'm starting to ration them. The coarse grinding wheels are a lot cheaper and last much longer. So for the heavy duty work, removing a lot of material, they're a lot better, and then the flap discs work good for kind of finishing up. Okay, so now I'm over on the other side, and previously I had made some cuts in the framework to make adjustments in the angles and the positioning, so now I'm going back and welding everything back in place. Hopefully for the last time, but you never know. There's still a few minor issues with the geometry and the nose. and I'm still kind of brainstorming and trying to come up with ways to improve it. I think at this point it's at a place where it's acceptable, but of course I pretty much see every imperfection every time I look at it. It's kind of driving me crazy, but it's much better than it was. Kind of a steep learning curve on a project like this. I definitely have some good ideas of where we made our mistakes, where we kind of went wrong. Squareness being an issue. We kind of, and this was pointed out in the last episode, somebody mentioned it, and absolutely correct. We sort of base all our measurements on kind of a front to back and a side to side based on the frame and the axles sort of as a reference point, but we kind of rushed and failed to think about taking those kind of cross measurements to verify squareness. Just didn't think about it, slipped my mind. You wouldn't think it would be that, out of square, but ultimately I think it being slightly out of square is what's causing some of these angles to kind of not match up. And obviously we're like dealing with these like compound angles, and it's pretty frustrating to try to get everything just right. So yeah, now I'm just fitting that panel on the other side. The cardboard's great for patterning, but it doesn't quite react the same way as a rigid piece of steel. So just checking all the angles, rechecking. That angle finder is just kind of a rough estimate. It's actually not a perfect gauge, unfortunately. So yeah, I'm just tacking this in place, and time will tell if I decide to actually grind these tacks out and move this and readjust it again. We'll see. But that's kind of the final product of the work that we did. Okay, so that's a day's work right there. I've fixed a few of the little problems we had, and I've got that passenger side panel put on and in place, and looking at it from the front, it looks pretty good, pretty symmetrical. I don't think there's much more I can do at this point. I think the next step now is to cut the hood, get that patterned, and get a piece of 1/4 inch cut for the hood. Okay, I'm going to wrap this video up right here. If you like this format of video, definitely let us know in the comments below. Also, if you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comments. I like to hear the feedback. In the next video, we're going to be working on the nose and the hood and some of that, and we're going to be working on that front windscreen area. So we got a lot more fabrication to do. If you want to see more of Project 222, make sure to like and subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.